Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Week 2 is underway, and we're ready with some pickup suggestions, a week review, so much to talk about. There's a lot of slumping players, and as well as slumping teams. Did anyone expect this out of Jersey? We'll talk about that. I'm Gamby with my co-host Brandon, and we have one quick announcement for you that you're all going to really love. So we appreciate the support from everyone so much that we've gotten this offseason, and we got to 1,000+ members in our Discord. We got to 1,000+ subscribers in YouTube. We did this all in under 3 months or something like that, which is absolutely insane. So one, thank you to anybody that has joined any of those things. And so we wanted to give back a little bit. So we're going to give away 5 sets of our beanies and scarves, which if you haven't seen the scarves before, it says "You Gotta Move" on one side and Fantasy Hockey Podcast on the other one. It's a collectible if Dustin Byfuglien retires. Just putting that out there. You are submitting an entry to a collectible Dustin Byfuglien "You Gotta Move" scarf. Sort of. TBD on if it's actually a collectible, but I think it will be. So the way it works is you can check out our Twitter, check out our site, or check out Discord, and you'll find a Google form where you can enter. You'll have to put in your email, and then aside from that, you'll get 4 chances at entry. So you can enter your Discord username if you're in our Discord. You can enter your Twitter handle if you follow us on Twitter. You can enter your YouTube username if you subscribe to us. And then you can also enter your patron kind of email or username if you are a patron to us, and that's another entry. So there's 4 possible entries. All of them count. And at the end of the week, so on Sunday, we will announce a winner, or 5 winners, sorry. So we'll announce 5 winners on Sunday, and that's about it. I miss anything, Brandon?
No, I think you got it all.
No, miracle.
I am here.
Absolute miracle on first try. Brandon is alive. Just at times I talk a little bit too much and get too excited. So as usual, because I talked too much at the beginning, I'm going to let Brandon take us into the week review.
Yeah, this will be an interesting one because I'm on a bunch of coffee and also Benadryl, so I don't really know how I sound or look, or we'll see.
To be fair, I got hit with a puck yesterday during a game and while in net, and I'm pretty sure I got a little bit of a concussion. And so I also don't know how I have this much energy. Oh, there goes the speech. Nice.
That's a concussion right there. So getting into the week, the first thing, there's a lot of obvious kind of talking points here. One of them, of course, being the hot start from Mika Zibanejad. But I feel like we've already gone over that a bit. So I actually want to shed a little light on something that hasn't really been talked about all that much, and that's Viktor Arvidsson actually having 2 power play points in 5 games. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot. Frankly, it's not a lot. But for Viktor Arvidsson, a guy who had something like 6 or 7 power play points all of last season, it's definitely a good sign. The thing that's held Viktor Arvidsson back from being a really, really good player as far as fantasy is concerned is a lack of power play production. If this continues, and it seems like it will, he is going to be a steal for whoever took him in the 8th+ round. He's a big shooter. He's a goal scorer, which is already hard to come by that deep. And if he can get these power play points working, you could see him get a 70-point season or so. So it's great to see. That was always he almost outscored his power play points with shorthanded points last season, which is just ridiculous. But so yeah, I'm really excited to see that. It seems like Nashville's power play is at least kind of working, and Arvidsson is a part of it. He's not just kind of there standing around while other people score goals.
Yep. For me, the other really surprising thing, and you can't really, I don't think you can top this, is Edmonton and Anaheim is atop the Pacific right now. We totally saw that coming, right? Well,
Sure.
I think we said that in our team previews. Totally said Edmonton and Anaheim at the week 1 of the season will be up at the top, and Edmonton will be undefeated. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. It's been a silly week. San Jose is just not really figuring it out. Edmonton actually looks really good.
And Anaheim has Gibson.
And Anaheim has Gibson, who is worth an entire team, apparently. So I don't
did the same thing last season, to be fair.
Yeah,
the Ducks were ahead of the conference, not the conference, I don't think, but the division to start, maybe through October, if I remember right.
Yeah. But I will say that the thing with Edmonton, which we mentioned on Friday's episode, is the shooting percentage is just way too high. They are benefiting from luck way too much on the offensive side of the puck.
James, the real deal Neal, is a 26% shot, just as an actual person. That's just what he will do for the rest of the season. I'm kidding.
So it's interesting to see what will happen, I think, once all this comes back down to earth. I'm curious to see what happens when Edmonton stops shooting at these ridiculous levels, and then they have to rely on goaltending and defense a little bit more, because that's going to be the real test for them, is when they're not producing on offense like this, what team are they then?
Yep. Neil's actually shooting 37%. So.
Oh, lovely.
But,
that's even more sustainable.
Yeah.
It's sustainable as you go up.
We'll get more into Neil, but I'm not fading him as hard as I sound like I'm fading him right now, to say the least. All right, next up, all the rookies except for Makar that were like kind of known entities, the guys you drafted, and excluding Quinn Hughes, are entering drop territory in redraft leagues to me. In standard 12-man, like if you're in a 16-person with 20 players rostered and whatever, then sure. But in standard redraft leagues with like that are semi-shallow, semi-deep, there's just not enough promise right there. Even before the season started, I was giving, and I think a lot of analysts gave relatively conservative-ish estimates for what we were expecting from these guys. I gave Kakko, I think it was a 58-point pace. Gusev, I think it was a little higher. Hughes, I think I was right around the same with Kakko. And the thing is, they are not getting the ice time. With the last game, we did see Kakko get an increase in ice time, but he's still not power play 1. He's still not on the line you want him to be on. And even with the upside, there's so much else going on in the league right now. It's worth it to just take a stab at somebody else. Yeah. Depending on what's going on. I think I think you're going to agree with this. I think at this point, Kakko is probably worth a little bit more than Gusev because for some reason Gusev said he prefers to play with Rooney. I it's just, why would you do that? But he did that.
In other words, Gusev is not a smart man.
No. So they asked, who do you want to play with? And he's like, I like Rooney. And they're like, all right. So now he's essentially relegated himself to like a fourth line. But
it's just odd. It's like, okay, cool. Thanks, Gusev.
I read that and just like raked my own eyes. I was just like, what? And then Jack Hughes, it's just, he just can't. He's made a couple plays that look like they would have been goals. The almost assist on Taylor Hall's 5-on-3, but it just hasn't happened. And a lot of this points to struggles in the Devils power play to begin with. But it's just, you could give him another week. That's essentially what I'm doing. I'm waiting one more week to see if any numbers change. You know, there's already 5 games going on at the Devils, and neither one of those guys look like somebody I want to keep long term. Kakko, like I said, has only had 3 games. Ice time's increasing. Well, it decreased, then increased. But if he gets over 16 minutes a game, I can see him be relevant, hopefully. But his complete lack of peripherals also makes me worried. So
yeah,
as much as there's hype around these guys, I would not extend the leash as much as you might think.
Yeah, I think I would actually, for one, I would try to trade first. Because they hold a lot of, name value, of course. Like people are excited about Kakko and excited about Hughes. And so I'd float, trades out there and see if anyone actually wants them. And you might get biters. You never know. But I think the thing is, like you were saying, right? And this gets back to, I'm going to take a step back and talk about really quick the fact that people say, well, I took him, towards the end of the draft, and so I can give him a leash. But that's not really how it works, right? Like when you take a player at the end of a draft, you're drafting for upside. At least I hope you are. If you're drafting for a floor in the 16th round, you're probably going to be in trouble. Unless you're going for peripheral floor, then fine. But these give you none of that. And so really what you're looking for is upside. And quite frankly, at this moment, Kakko, Hughes, Gusev, for example, just they don't have the ceiling that some other guys that are emerging do. If you compare that to, the pickups in Neil or the pickups in, or you've seen like guys like Sam Reinhart get dropped or Hurdle or, players like that, like they have more upside. That's just the fact of the matter. And that's what you're really looking for. So just because you got a guy really late doesn't necessarily mean you should hold on to him and have a longer leash. Quite the opposite. In my opinion, when you draft someone really late, it's actually just more leverage. It's like, okay, well, I got him late and I probably had a good rest of the draft. So, I'm just looking for upside. If someone comes along with much more higher upside, then I'm fine with that. And that's how I view some of these rookies, is especially if you got them late enough, like, for example, Gusev, you're not going to lose anything by giving up on him a little bit earlier. If, for example, a Hurdle gets dropped or just somebody with more upside. And right now, I think you pointed out well, but Kakko and Hughes, just from a peripheral standpoint, from a point standpoint, from a deployment standpoint, none of it points to me to say high upside guys. None of them seem like, I'm trying to think of the last like really, really good rookie that came, like even Dahlin last year. Like I don't even see them being in Dahlin's like universe of how good he was last year in a redraft standpoint.
Yeah, except for Makar. It does seem like he's right in Dahlin's, but with zero peripherals.
Yes, I think the only ones that I like Quinn Hughes. I like Makar for upside.
Olafson, of course.
I like Olafson, of course, but looking at Kako, looking at Hughes, looking at Gusev, just not the upside that I like when I'm using a roster spot on them. My next piece of news here is scoring up permanently now.
It might be.
It feels like this might be the new NHL normal. I know we talked about in the offseason how we wanted to give it some time and see what's up. And we wanted to assume, okay, it's somewhere in the middle between last season and the year before. But it seems like scoring may really, really be up.
I mean, that's what the NHL has kind of strived for a while. So it makes sense. They made a lot of changes trying to make this happen with the goaltender equipment modifications, smaller pads and such. Yep. So it makes sense. And, of course, the action they've taken against headshots and they've tried anyway. And those type and slashing penalties and stuff, all that is opening up room for the skill players. So the fact that skill players are allowed to play with skill I guess it makes sense that it's going to increase goal scoring. I did make all my projections assuming that would not happen, but if it is, then maybe we'll have like 400 or 500 point players again.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, scoring is not up for Kaapo Kakko and Jack Hughes and Nikita Gusev. Okay, nope. Take us into your next piece of news.
So I feel like the LA Kings are the team that was the most forgotten in drafts.
Yep, we talked about this.
Yeah, we saw Kopitar, Dustin Brown, to a lesser extent Kovalchuk as well, just not even on the radar. Like, the funny thing is Kopitar was a second or third round pick last season is where people took him. And now there were certain leagues where he didn't go drafted. There's certain leagues you get drafted in like the 13th, 14th round. And he's still good. Like, this is one of the bigger swings I've seen. He's very on and off, as we've seen from a season by season standpoint. This is the odd season. So maybe it's going to be on again for whatever silly reason he has. But right now, Kopi has 7 points in 4 games. Dustin Brown has 5 points in 4 games. They're the guys that the Kings need to rely on. So if they're going to get points, it's going to be through them. And I think the Kings will get points. Some. And then to a lesser extent, Kovalchuk, he saw a huge ice time dip in his last game, which was weird, but I think it has to do with the Kings jumping out to a lead and just kind of playing young players and all that good stuff. But if he can continue to get a 16 plus time on ice while playing top power play, I think he's got more value than a lot of people want to give him. His peripherals are annoying, honestly, but I don't know. I'm as we know, if you've been listening to the show, I'm a little higher on Kovalchuk than a lot of people anyway. Because I mean, he's a guy you can pick up off waivers, right? So I'm not saying he's super high upside, but his whole game is scoring and getting points, and that's why he came back to the NHL, is to do that on a team, the Kings. So I'm hoping that he can get something done. I'll go into that more later, as he is one of my long-term pickup suggestions in certain leagues. Another player like that you could talk about on the Kings is Drew Doughty. He was faded super hard, and he's not the best defenseman in the world, but he's a decent offensive threat with great peripherals. I know that you, Gamby, picked up Doughty in a lot of leagues. I was also targeting him in a lot of leagues, just because even if he doesn't get you points, he gets you a lot of other things. Yep. And I was over projecting his point totals compared to a lot of other projections I saw, getting him, in the 50s somewhere. And I think that's super reasonable at this point. I think Doughty could be if you got him past like the 8th round or so, he could be a great option in banger leagues, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happens too is you see guys like Dustin Brown and Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty, but what ends up happening a lot of times is there's a ton of recency bias, and for whatever reason, the Kings, I feel like in the past 2-3 years, are the ones that get the most of it, get the brunt force. Like, Kopitar went off, and then the next year he became a second-round pick. The Kings sucked as a whole last year. Kopi was all right, and then he fell way past even what he was worth last year. Like, that's, I think, what was surprising to us in the offseason was they were falling far past what they did the year prior when the Kings were awful. And I didn't think they were going to get worse than that. I thought there was only up from there, just because it was such a low point for that top line. And Kopi shot so low from a percentage standpoint. Like, so many things were just not right. I thought that you could only go up, and people seem to think, oh, well, the Kings suck. They're all going to suck, so I'm not touching them. Instead, if you looked at the kind of the numbers from the year prior, you'd see, okay, there's actually is a lot of value on the table here from them. So, like I have 11 shares of Drew Doughty. So I am not Drew Doughty, I have Dustin Brown. So I am quite happy right now.
All right, I'll move us into the injury report. There actually is not much, except for every time there is an injury, it affects one of my teams for some reason. But we had Josh Anderson go on the IR, although it was retroactive to a week ago, so he's activatable at any moment. He has missed 3 games so far, though. A big blow to a team that doesn't really have much going on anyway, with Josh Anderson being such a good peripheral producer. We had Andreas Athanasiou return to the Red Wings. He's a decent option in semi-deep leagues if you count shot totals. I'd like to see him get on that top power play. He has not taken it over from Heroes yet, but we'll see. Alex Galchenyuk is day-to-day with a lower body injury. He's also moved retroactively to the IR. And then we've got, lastly here, Evgeny Malkin is out 6 to 10 weeks is the original prognosis. But with Malkin, I don't know. I assume any timeline ever given for him is like the minimum. So I'm a little worried about what that might mean.
Yeah, it reminds me of Taylor Hall a little bit last year.
Yeah.
Okay, and then moving into long-term targets, so people you should be picking up and paying attention to longer term, probably holding on to. My first one here is going to be Oscar Klefbom. Now, he's 54% owned, but I'm still seeing a lot of people ask in Discord, on Twitter, and different places whether they should be picking him up. And the answer, in my opinion, is yes. Granted, I should mention that literally every single year Klefbom finds himself onto this list at some point. I don't know, the past 2 years, he hasn't lived up to being on the list. He ends up getting dropped again eventually. But I don't know. I feel like this might be his year. This might be the year he finally stays. So let's talk about the good and the bad, because there are 2 sides of that coin. The good is that his power play time on ice is up about 45%, along with his share of power play time relative to the team. So he's getting more opportunity on the power play, and the power play seems to actually be working for once. So that's a good thing for him. The other thing is that his hits and blocks are up quite a bit, especially the hits, which is really good for peripheral leagues such as banger leagues. So if those are up, that adds even more value to what was already good from Klefbom. And he's shooting just around the same as he was last year. Now, there's a few concerning things, though. His on-ice shooting percentage is 17.46%. That's really, really high.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's not fantastic. So that's something to pay attention to, of course. And that's at all strengths. So that's on top of the power play and everything. That should be significantly lower. IPP is also 50% higher than it finished last year. I think that there's a reasonable estimate that last year he didn't do as well as he should have, and the Oilers
He was off
in
top
general
power play
were
for a
bad.
good chunk of last year, which didn't help.
Exactly. So I think that really, though, I don't think his IPP should be 50% higher than last year. I think it's safer to assume it'll be maybe like 20% higher. I think that's safer than a 50% increase. And then
By
that
the way,
gets to the last thing.
IPP is basically the amount of time, the percentage of points scored while he's on the ice that he is a part of. So if he got an assist or a goal on that point, then he gets that percentage of individual points percentage.
Yes, so he's been factoring into a lot of the points. Now, one of the reasons that is that his secondary assist rate is really high. Granted, he actually had a really high secondary assist rate last year at 61%, and he's currently sitting at 83% of all his assists are secondary. So that's something that's a little bit concerning, but it's not wildly concerning when you consider the fact that he's a guy who gives the puck off to McDavid, and then McDavid does whatever he does on the power play in real life. Like that's kind of one of the reasons is you're giving it off to maybe one of the best assist men in the entire game, and Klefbom benefits from that. So while a little bit concerning, it's not that concerning. Of course, that will come down eventually, so that's the one thing to watch. If those don't translate to primary assists, then at some point when this on-ice shooting percentage comes down, then he's going to see his point totals come down. So I don't think he's like a rush to add over, a defenseman that you have. But for example, you have a Gudas or even Pulak potentially, or a Gostisbehere. Those guys I would very, very hard or very much debate adding Klefbom over.
Yeah. All right, for my first one, I already mentioned I was going to talk about him, so I'll just go right in, is Ilya Kovalchuk at 12%. He's left wing, right wing, so that flexibility is nice. The big concern is ice time and peripherals to a lesser extent, but they're basically tied together. If you're not getting ice time, you're not getting peripherals. So the thing is, the Kings have essentially 2 goal scorers, really, and Dustin Brown is the other one. So you'd think that, especially on the power play, Kopitar's looking for somebody. And it's if Kovalchuk can be the guy he looks for, and I think the ultimate ideal scenario is that Kovalchuk finds his way to top line, which I do think at some point they have to try. But they're scoring enough goals that they probably don't need to yet. So I think there's potential here. This is a deeper league move. It's not something you need to do in a 10-man league or anything, but if you're in a 12-person and you've got a couple slow starters or you're looking for a little bit of a point injection possibly, he's a decent guy to take a flyer on, I think. I am worried about his ice time, but I do think that you can't really take into effect a 7-4 game for ice time all that much. So we'll see what happens in his next game.
I think I'll disagree that it's like a long-term ad. I think it's a good gamble right now. Like it's kind of like holding a Hughes, right? Where there's upside from a goal.
Well, it's holding a Hughes who's scoring though. Already.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. It's like he's not like a hold as in hold him and he's like a key player for you. It's just he's a good gamble
as long as he's scoring. And that could be, I don't know how long that'll be, but hopefully it'll be forever.
He's never going to retire. He's going to be the Jaromir Jagr for the Kings. My next one here is going to be someone we've talked about a lot. Another kind of highly owned guy, but I think it's important to mention him is Rope Hintz. Center, left wing, 55%. We've talked a lot about him. You probably know why we like him. There's a lot to like. Good peripherals, although honestly his hits and blocks are a little bit down from last year, which isn't great. But he does have 24% more ice time. He's shooting more, and his power play time on ice is up. The only thing to watch with him for sure is that he's getting a majority of his points from goals right now. Of course, small sample size with less games, but his shooting percentage is high. So that will eventually come down, affecting obviously his point totals.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. My next one here is Ondrej Kase, which I'm excited to mention.
I knew it.
He's only 14% owned. I almost didn't mark him because I thought for sure he was higher owned than that, just from the drafts that I've been in the leagues and whatever. But 14% owned. He's got 4 points in 5 games and 17 shots. So I'm liking that, and that's what you know. That's Kase's game is high shooting, high shot production. Just the whole thing that's held him back is injuries, but also actually being able to get those shots to go in. He had a decent pace last season. He's continuing to be on that, and I know you're not like the biggest fan of him for whatever reason, but I basically think you're a big hater and you shouldn't be listened to about anything. So
I mean, that's a great analysis.
Yeah, he is sitting at 77% offensive zone start, which is handy. His shooting percentage is down quite a bit. He usually shoots about 11% or so. He's at 6%, so we could see his goals come up, probably at the cost of primary assists, but and everything else feels pretty in line for him. His on-ice shooting percentage a little high, and I don't like the fact that his power play percentage is a little bit down, but we're so early in the year and he's been shifted all over the place, and now he's finally on top line again. So
he's top line, but his average time on ice has come down from last year.
I'm not that worried about that yet.
It's still, but the problem is
down like a small, like 4%. Like
okay, but here's my thing with Kase, right? Like the thing with Kase isn't the fact that it's down, and that's like I don't mean it went down, so that's bad. I mean the fact that it's going down is a negative because you need it to go up with a player like Kase. Kase is a volume guy. You need him to get shots to score those goals, and if his minutes are going down or staying around the same, one, that tells me management isn't giving him as many opportunities, and two, that's just not a promising sign. They have gone up, actually. He started at 14 minutes, then he went up to 16. Okay, well, I want to see it around like 17 consistently. If it's like in that 14 to 16 range, then we're literally looking at the Kase of last year.
Everybody write this down.
I mean, look, that's my take. I think if Kase gets the same minutes as last year, which right now he is on average, we're going to see the same Kase as last year, the same pace.
We saw and it's going to be the same. That played 30 games last year, though.
30
He's
games
paced pretty well. 20 points, 30 games. Pace. Yeah. It's all right.
It's fine.
He's a bottom guy considering the shots. The only problem I see with Kase is his lack of power play points.
Yeah.
If he can get power play points, he's like a not great Victor Arvidsson, basically. Lots of shots, goal scoring first, can't do it on the power play for some reason, and just doesn't like the thing that's holding him back is his ice time, like you mentioned. Yep. So the fact that it's going up at least feels nice. I mean, but we'll see what happens in the end.
Yeah, like I said, I want to see it go up and be consistently up for a while before I'd get behind actually recommending him. But until then, I guess I'm a hater who actually doesn't know anything and just doesn't like anyone you recommend.
Yeah, pretty much.
My next one here is going to be on the Blackhawks. I actually don't think you'll like this one, but it's Andrew Shaw, center right wing.
I don't like
9%.
this one.
Yep. Shots are way up. His hits are also way up on the season from a pace perspective. And he's playing with Kane at the moment, which is lovely. Of course, the one negative side to him is that his power play time on ice is down. But in my opinion, what you could see from Andrew Shaw, potentially, is you could see a pretty similar Blake Coleman with a better line mate in Patrick Kane with point upside. That's what I'm seeing in him, potentially. And on top of that, he has, of course, center right wing eligibility. I'm high on Shaw, and he's shown us at many times throughout his career that he can be fantasy relevant. And I think that if he can actually stick that second line spot, and right now he's second power play, so really the way I look at it is if you're in a bangers league, Andrew Shaw is just a good gamble. It's just a good guy to grab that is going to get you peripherals nonetheless, very good peripherals, and has a lot of point upside by playing with a guy like Patrick Kane. Aside from that, like I wouldn't say pick
the
him
same
up
ice
because of
time as
points.
Kasha, basically. I will fight you.
Yeah, but guess what? He has more peripherals than Kasha.
He has hits, yeah.
Yeah,
But he's
he
not
has
going to get
hits.
anything done on the
He's
power
blocked.
play, where hopefully Kasha will at some point. But
Well, so far he's done nada. He's
Nada.
done zilch. And guess what? You know what? Their average power play time on ice is not that different. Not that different. I mean, granted, it's, still maybe, 30 seconds more of average time on ice on the power play for Andre Kasha, but it's not that different. And Shaw's played 2 less games. And actually, Shaw's getting more ice time and shooting just a little bit more per 60. So, I don't know. You tell me. And he gets
the
more
Ducks
hits.
have only had 10 power play opportunities in 5 games. That's super low.
Still.
So that's not helping.
2 whole games less. In my opinion, Andrew Shaw is a better option in bangers leagues than Andre Kasha. Sign it.
Sign it. I disagree. Anyway, I do like Shaw for short-term options when the Blackhawks have a good schedule, especially if you need the hits. You know what? I'm going to go into one that's a hot take-ish, but this is for super deep leagues. And that's Nikita Zaitsev. 1%. He's
What?
1% owned.
Are we're not actually recommending Zaitsev here, are we?
Yeah, but
Oh God.
you have it's only for hits and blocks leagues. His trends for hits and blocks right now, because what can the Senators do? Their defense is so bad they have to rely on whoever, and that means that we're seeing Zaitsev get 20% more time on ice. He went from just over 20 minutes to over 24 average so far.
Oh my God,
And-
you're not wrong. His hit and block pace is insane.
His block pace right now is 226. That's like Chris Russell
What?
numbers, but he also hits a lot, and he also shoots a decent amount. So you're looking at a guy that can get you essentially 3 category coverage in huge blocks, decent hits, shots, but I'm basically ignoring his 2 points. I think he'll probably wind up with like 25 points or something. Nothing great, but that block pace, if you need a block specialist, he's one of the better ones right now. I feel like Chris Russell used to be the go-to guy. Maybe he still is when he's playing. But if you can get Zaitsev, you're going to get a little bit more value because he also puts in those other stats to some extent.
So right now, Zaitsev actually has more blocks than Russell and a far higher pace. I think that's simply because of minutes. Chris
His
Russell's
hits pace
only
is
playing around.
267. Like,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
the
Like
thing
he's not
is
going to
that
hit either of these
Zaitsev is
numbers
playing-
probably, but he's banging people and he's blocking.
Yeah, the thing is that Zaitsev is playing 24 minutes a game, whereas Chris Russell's only playing like 17 and a half.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. That's why Zaitsev is showing up. Zaitsev, even last year when he was only playing 20 minutes a game, he had some value in block leagues and hits leagues, like super deep ones where you're really looking for a guy that can just even cover two categories. Now he's covering those 2 much better and kind of shots, a little bit shots.
The shots are like a half of Clef Bombs, pretty much. So
Yeah, I mean, that's what you expect. Like, Clefbaum actually shoots. Zaitsev is not going to shoot. But if he can get expect something like 110 shots, which is not great, but it's not zero.
Yeah. Okay, I've come around on that. I don't hate it. As a
this,
specialist, I don't
Yeah,
I don't hate
Zaitsev,
it.
I feel like even in certain 12-person leagues, if you like kind of faded hits and blocks, but you have like a solid point scoring team, he's a guy you can slot in potentially. Yeah. Especially if you don't have Pims. If you have Pims, then he doesn't really get Pims. So you might have a better option. But if you're simply hits and blocks are your banger stats, there's some value there.
Okay, I came around on that. Okay, I can get behind that. I'll stick with the theme of defenseman here and just recommend Justin Schultz really quick. Defenseman, obviously, 22% owned. Minutes are way up, and he's getting top power play while Malkin is out. That's it.
Yeah,
that's why.
That was my last one, too. I had Schultz listed here. 22% seems pretty low considering it was pretty well-known news that he was getting top power play as soon as Malkin went down. And so I'm surprised he hasn't picked up more.
We're probably looking at like 6 to 10 weeks of top power play for Schultz because Malkin is out. And then, of course, with Malkin, who knows how long it's going to take for him to get back to health, or if he comes back and isn't really that ready for the power play yet. Yeah. We could see Justin Schultz be a mainstay up there for quite a while here.
We also saw him bump Letang a couple of times, which is interesting. Yeah. Even this season had happened once. So Schultz 22%. I added him in a couple of the listener leagues.
Yeah. So his power play time on ice is almost double this year so far. Yep. Which is really impressive. I mean, granted, he only played 29 games last year, but honestly, at this point, he's better than Andre Kasha, so that's all that matters.
You need to stop this.
Any way I can. Let's move on to the week preview. So last week, I had a few people reach out and say, I didn't know when the different sections were. So I'm going to try to make it as clear as day here when I'm switching sections. So let's start first with the teams that play 4 or more games. I'm going to get into the off nights in a second. So these are not just off nights. These are teams that play a total of 4 games. It's going to be Edmonton, Washington, Anaheim, Minnesota, Colorado, Dallas, Buffalo, Calgary, Montreal, Vancouver. There's a lot of teams that play 4 games. So that means there's a lot of opportunities for pickups this week.
This is a good week for fantasy. A real good week for fantasy.
It's a real good week to make pickups. Unfortunately, I don't really have teams that I don't have any players I can drop. So I don't know what to do. And then for teams that have 2 or less games, this is, I guess this is only 2 actually. There's only 1 team. And as though they haven't caused you enough pain already, it's the San Jose Sharks with only 2 games. And that's it. Nobody else.
Yikes.
Yep. More pain for San Jose Shark owners.
All pain.
Yep. Okay, now moving on to off nights. So these are teams that have 3 or more off nights. If they only have 2 off nights, they do not count here. There are a lot of teams with 2 off nights, but I'm not going to include them in this just because honestly there's a ton of them. If you want to see them, you can go to our draft tool on fantasyhockeypodcast.com and find them there. Okay, so let's start first with the teams with 4 off nights. It's going to be Edmonton, Washington, and Anaheim. Edmonton plays Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, as does Washington and Anaheim.
Well, those are the off nights this week.
So yeah, so that's why they all play 4. But that's super impressive, and for good reason. Most of our short-term pickups here are going to be from those 3 teams. Now, there's a few teams that play 3 nights. That's going to be Minnesota, who plays Monday, Tuesday, and Sunday. Colorado plays Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Dallas plays Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. Carolina plays Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then Chicago plays Monday, Friday, and Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Tuesday is also an off night this week.
For once.
So
it's a rare night.
There's a big asterisk I'd put on Minnesota for this week. And that's because Minnesota is the only team that you listed there of those 3 off-night teams that misses Saturday, and Saturday is the big one. Yep. So you could probably pick somebody up on Minnesota as well because there's only 8 games, or no, there's 9 total games on Thursday, but on Saturday there's 11. So the fact that they play Thursday and not Saturday, probably a slight boost. You have to look at your roster, of course, but you're less likely to be benching players on Thursday than you are on Saturday. So that gives Minnesota that little bit extra.
There also is a strategy here in which there's so many teams with 2 off nights where you can get 4 or 5 off nights out of teams. For example, if you look at like a Colorado who has Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Carolina who has Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, or Dallas who has Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you could pick up one of those players and then get another player for Sunday. And then that way you're now getting 4 off nights. So there's strategy there to be had, or that you can implement to try to get the most out of it. So I would add, if you can't get an Edmonton, Washington, or Anaheim player, what I would advocate is either going after a early of the week 3 game player and then going for a Sunday, or there's some teams who have, like, let's say just a Monday and Tuesday. You can grab a player from that and then grab one of the players that have like Wednesday and Friday, or something like that, and then you can also do Sunday on top of that. So there's a lot of ways you can
there's a lot of max out potential.
Yeah. Which Brandon and I play this week, so he's going to use that to the max against me.
The only team that plays Monday and Tuesday is also Minnesota. So if you really wanted to get weird, you could take a Minnesota player from Monday, Tuesday, and then swap for one of the other teams that has the 3 off nights on Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and wind up with 5 starts. So there's things. There's things you can do.
There are possibilities. Okay, moving into short-term targets. My first one is going to be from Edmonton, and the obvious one, and I couldn't believe actually he was this low still, is Zach Cassian.
Oh, yeah, I got him too.
Yeah, 16% owned, right wing. I'm surprised he's this low, but I'm also
He's 17%
not surprised.
when I checked, so he must be going up a little bit.
He probably went up a little bit since I wrote these, but the thing with him it's tough because on one hand he's on McDavid's wing, which is great, but the problem is that when you watch the games, I mean, he has stones for hands. I swear, McDavid could serve him. He's worse than Patrick Maroon because he can't finish, and so he's more of almost like a Tom Wilson before Tom Wilson started scoring points to an extent, or doing any of the other things Tom Wilson does that makes him valuable. So, but that all being said, he is worth the gamble given his 4 off nights and the line he's on, and Edmonton is on fire. So, for all that being said, he is worth the risk, in my opinion, as somebody who will get you off nights.
Especially in bangers leagues. So, I would mention Kasha here again.
I had to, be honest.
But I already talked about him, so I'm going to mention the other Duck that we mentioned as a pickup candidate for the weekend. You may still have him if you did that pickup, and that's Jacob Silverberg at 9%. Yeah, I already went over this. He's top power play. He's getting okay minutes. He's an okay guy. And when there's a good schedule, then an okay guy becomes rosterable. So that's what happened. He's not necessarily a long-term hold, but if you're going to get extra starts out of him, he's good enough, to say the least.
Yeah. He's something.
He's a player. He smacks things with sticks.
He does. So sticking to that same thing, I'm going to go to a Duck as well here. I'm going to say Ryan Getzlaf at 27% owned.
He's only 27%?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, his minutes are down to around 16 and a half.
Still.
Isn't great. Yeah, it's not pretty. He's not having that great of a season, to be honest. His shots are down quite a bit. His minutes are down quite a bit. His power play time on ice is down just a little bit. Everything kind of is down, to be honest. The one thing that is up is his hits and his blocks. Or his blocks are actually just around the same, to be honest. So he's more of like in my opinion, someone who probably has one of the highest point upsides in a 4-game week like this that you can grab, right? Like, we know who Getzlaf is, and he's normally a good kind of point producer, or at least used to be. So I like taking guys like him that have upside in points and can also get you peripherals, especially when it's a known commodity like him, and someone that could get hot at any time, and you could either trade him or potentially becomes a hold sort of thing. I'm not that high on him. I don't think he's going to become a long-term hold. I actually thought that 27% was a little high for him, given how poorly he's been playing and just how they're shifting around those lines.
He does get PIMs usually. I don't know if he's getting them this season, but typically he does.
So I think that even with all that being said, I like I like the gamble on him this week.
Yep. My last one here is Jason Zucker over in Minnesota. 31% owned. I actually think there's a few options in Minnesota, and I think a reason to be looking there is the matchups they have. They get to play Ottawa, then they play Toronto, has been pretty suspect defensively so far, and then Montreal twice. Those are not that hard of matchups. They just kind of shimmied the lines around, which for some reason put Mikko Koivu top line. I don't know why, but between Parise and Zucker, Zucker is, I mean, he's got to be the goal scorer there. So it's him or Parise, I guess. He's definitely a short-term ad, 31% owned, left wing, right wing. He could find a way into your lineup. And if he does poorly after Monday, Tuesday, you can just swap him out.
Okay. So I have 2 more here. I'm going to mention a guy that's actually been kind of picked up really frequently recently, and that's going to be Eric Howla, center, left wing, 34%. He's definitely not a long-term ad, in my opinion. But while that second power play is crushing it, and while it's kind of the depth show in Carolina, where everyone on the second and third line seem to be crushing it, I like Eric Howla quite a bit. Or Aho. Well, Aho's not doing anything. So Aho is the one who doesn't benefit. Yeah. I didn't hear poor Aho. And then the other guy from Carolina that I want to mention is a center, Jordan Staal, 16%. Svechnikov is on fire. And you know who's on Svech's line? That's Jordan Staal. And so if I wanted to bet on someone to benefit from Svechnikov and some of the other players' performances, that would be Jordan Staal, in my opinion. And he gets you somewhat decent periferaals. Not the really best good hits in the world. Yeah, not like holistic coverage. He gets you good hits, but not like a holistic, he's a great banger. He's like a good hitter for what it's worth. And his shots are okay. He has 13 shots on the season through 4 games. Decent shots per 60. It's not fantastic, but it's serviceable. And then right now he's on pace for 300 plus hits. So
I own him in 2 leagues, so I'm in on him.
yeah, I like Jordan Stahl quite a bit, and he's a really good real life player. So he's not someone that you would fear gets bad deployment. Quite the contrary, they want to put him in situations to succeed. Aside, he does get low offensive deployment, but that being said, he still plays with pretty good offensive players, and for that reason, I like him. And there you go. That is week 2 and its preview. Remember to enter the giveaway by going to our Twitter, Discord, or website. You can find the form on there to enter and try to get a scarf and a beanie from us for free. And other than that, we'll be back on Wednesday for Unsustainable episode. And other than that, thank you for listening, and we will see you Wednesday.
Yeah, thanks for listening.